Dharma. That's what he does. He was a hunter. He goes hunting for birds. But he didn't. He just like he was crushing. How many of us have been crushed into this thing? The Ramayana, what's the secret? I want to go into the secret of the Ramayana. And we'll get to Sita and Hanuman. But the secret of the Ramayana, what's the active ingredient? Because I'm going to tell you something, okay, it's a big statement. The Ramayana is a direct means for the unfoldment of Brahma. The Ramayana is a direct means for the unfoldment of Brahma. You can get fully enlightened by studying deeply the Ramayana. Full blossoming of totality. In fact, one of the names is Brahman on the stage, the blossoming of totality. Wholeness on the move. That's what life is about. Especially for people who are tuned into these other stories. Everyone has an affinity. Some people are connected to the Yoga Sutras. Some people are connected to Jyotish. Some people are connected to me, it's story. Everyone can relate to story. Because it's an archetypal impulse of our own nature. And all these characters, like I keep saying here, Ram lives in us, Sita lives in us, Hanuman lives in us, even Ravana, king of the demons, the dark force lives in us. And so, everything that's happening in the story that you're reading is happening inside. Ramayana is living in your physiology. So, what's the active ingredient? How does the Ramayana work? It's these waves of emotion swinging you back and forth. What that does is cultivate an extraordinary level of flexibility and expansiveness. Remember, we're working with the play of opposites. The play of opposites, the term in Sanskrit is dvandva. The Vedic literature is filled with dvandva. Best example, Bhagavad Gita. You all know the story of Arjuna on the battlefield? A lot of people know that. That's more familiar to more people. Bhagavad Gita has taken central stage, but my job is to make the Ramayana even bigger. Arjuna on the battlefield. What is happening? This is a classic archetypal example, but I'll give some examples from the Ramayana. He looks at the battlefield. He sees on one side his family. All of his family members. The Pandava, the ones, the unrighteous ones who are trying to usurp the kingdom for themselves, for their own power, their own glory, ego consciousness. But these are his cousins, his uncles, his grandfathers. And Krishna, who is his charioteer, is telling them he has to fight. But his heart is, what possibly good or value or righteous could I do by killing my own family? It's just not possible. It's not right. There's no action. There's no righteousness in this action. But at the same time, they're on the brink of a world war at this time. And he knows on the level of Karma, which he's been trained as the greatest archer in the world, that he must uphold righteousness and fight this guy. He's standing there on the battlefield in total suspension. He cannot move, and people paint that as showing weakness in Arjuna. It's not. He was at the maximum level of development. The most highly developed human at the time. His heart was so developed, and his mind was so developed on the principles of Dharma, knowing what right action is, and knowing that to kill his own family could never produce righteousness. And he was in suspension, and Krishna said, Gandiva, the bow, slips from his hand, and he collapses, unable to fight. I will not fight. This is the play of opposites. The opposites between love, the love of his family, and Dharma. Love, Dharma. Love, Dharma. Translate that into your own life. This feeling of suspension, where we're confronted by irreconcilable opposites over and over and over again. We think that's a problem to be gotten rid of. We think, if I could just, if you're struggling, let's say at some point in your life, you're struggling, living your purpose, your highest purpose, your passion, and at the same time you're living as sure you have kids, you have responsibilities. You know the action you need to do to support your family, that like the dharma, this love, this passion, and you feel this irreconcilable opposites. We sometimes make a change because we think, oh, I have to go towards the direction of my passion, or I have to go to the direction of my responsibilities because that's what I need to do. You choose one or the other, but another way to approach that is let those seemingly irreconcilable opposites gel. Feel their magnification. And this is you somehow have this breakthrough, just like Arjuna did on the battlefield, where he collapsed. This is when Krishna gave him the great teaching of Samkhya and took him to the level of enlightenment through the teaching. But he took him until he absolutely collapsed in the suspension because he felt these irreconcilable opposites and the pressure between them so greatly he could not move. So there's a value in letting this dynamic tension between these irreconcilable opposites gel, fulfill, till you transcend to a deeper level of synthesis. I'll say that again. Let these irreconcilable opposites build their dynamic tension till they somehow break through to some deeper level of synthesis that somehow encompasses these opposite values. This is how I define evolution. This is my eureka. This is when I did my degree in Vedic science, Vedic psychology. I looked into the structure of myth. And I looked into the structure of consciousness. And I looked into the structure of my own meditation, which I've been doing for a long time. And I saw, wow, this play of opposites is there embedded in everything. All the great epic myths. And you look at the study, you study Carl Jung and Claude Lévi-Strauss, the great anthropologist, even Hegel, the dialectic. How do myths work? There's one value that comes up and an opposite value that comes up. And you're forced to transcend to a deeper level of synthesis and somehow embrace this. That's how epic myths work, and that's the story of the fabric of nature. And I noticed in my own meditation that was going in the process of the mind settling down and breaking free from the outer levels of life and settling down to the finer and finer levels. I'm working on the level between the relative and the absolute. So we're structuring, it starts with baby steps, just simple little things in our life. And we're culturing the ability to transcend these irreconcilable opposites. Because that, I just want you to see, it's the framework of your evolution. It's not simple, it's not easier, and these opposites get bigger and bigger as you move on the path of your evolution. So the swing between opposite values cultures something powerful, emotional. That's where the Ramayana comes in. Now I'm coming back to the Ramayana. That was my little breakthrough on my eureka. The Ramayana is filled with these opposite values that create these swings of emotion. Dasharatha loved his son more than anything, and wanted him more than anything to be the heir to his throne and to rule the land. He loved his son like part of him. And yet, at a dharmic level, the king has to uphold his word. And he had promised Kaikeyi these two boons. He was forced to just agree, even though he hated to do it. And we're swung, and I mean, the scene goes on and on, just the pain, the emotional pain he felt, knowing he had to honor his word and agree with what Kaikeyi said. But Kaikeyi asked him at the same time, he could not banish his son. He eventually died of grief. But that was his transcending to a deeper level of being, because that's the other thing. There was a story that he had done something wrong when he was young and he was cursed, that he would be separated from his son. He had killed accidentally a sage's son. All those karmas come out in this story. So you see how I'm painting this fabric of reality, of how nature works, how your evolution works, and how the Ramayana is filled with these stories. And like Sita insisting she absolutely has to go. Ram knows it's not a good idea. Forest, they've got 14 years of exile deep in the forest, filled with wild beasts, and it's just so uncomfortable, it's so challenging. There's no comfort stations, there's no anything at this time. And Sita was brought up as a princess. She was delicate. And then you're swung, because Sita says all of her reasons why she must go to the forest. Ram said all the reasons why you cannot go to the forest, I will not take. and just you're swung back and forth in your heart's going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So I'm just inviting you to see that flow of nature as the fabric of your own evolution. Not that you're looking for conflict, not that you're looking for play opposites. Life has a way of just doing those two things, right? You can't get away from it. And the more you're on the path, things will get easier, the more it gets more challenging. Look at Ram. So now you get the fifth. Anyone have any questions on this? Just because we're going to pause?
I do. I was wondering why he had to agree to the boons from the wife.
Well, that's a real setup. It's a real setup. She, it's a long story, but she set it up in such a way Kake was really smart and made him give a promise before she told him what the boons are. And he could see how upset she was. And she said, whatever I tell you, do you agree that you will honor what I request? And she said, oh, yes, I love you. She set him up so good. So he really gave his word. And at that time, his lineage, the Solar Dynasty, which ruled, they had been ruling for thousands of years. It was a Solar Dynasty. They were known, just like in Game of Thrones, each of the kingdoms were known for a certain thing. They were known, the Ikshvakus, the Ragus, were known for honoring their word. They could not break their word. Whatever they said, they had to do.
So she purposely did that and ended up being the cause of his death for the grief. And that's his wife. Why did the stepwife come in? Because that's the stepwife.
He had 3 wives.
Okay.
3 wives. And she was a good woman, but she got twisted by her twisted servant.
Got it. Okay.
Which happens to us. How are you guys feeling right now? I see a little discomfort in the room. Yeah. I can see you guys are reflecting. I hope I'm not losing you by being abstract when I said this was going to be about the flow of devotion. But you can't set up the flow of devotion until you see the game we're playing. And when we get to Hanuman and Sita, it's a whole, by that point of the story, so they go into the forest, they're exiled for 14 years. The first 10 years go pretty good. Ram accepted it, absolutely acquiesced to it. Totally went with the flow. They decided they would just go from ashram to ashram and study with the rishis. It was a great time for 10 years. And then something. Who knows what happened next? You give me sound effects, Jason? The golden deer. So, this is not any sidetrack, but Ravana was the king of the demons, the Rakshasas, who lived in the south, supposedly in the mountains, and the Rakshasas were a special breed of people who they preyed on the rishis. They disrupted their sacrifices. They usually didn't kill them, but they disrupted their sacrifice. They tortured them. They disrupted their whole life. They got pleasure out of disrupting holiness. And the king of them was Ravana, who was the ultimate devotee. This is where it gets interesting. Ravana was the ultimate Shiva devotee. Shiva had given and Brahma had given the most incredible boons on the basis of his tapas. He meditated for thousands of years. He was one of the most knowledgeable men on the Vedas. He invented Ayurveda. He invented Gandharva Veda, the traditional music. He was a great sage. But he had an ego because he got these boons that nothing could kill him. He was invincible, absolutely invincible, except he didn't mention 2 things. That because at that time, he made himself invincible for the gods, the devas, the asuras, everything, nothing could touch him, no weapon could touch him. But he did mention men and monkeys, because they were too puny to even consider. So, now I'm getting to the levels of the story, because I'll come back to your question. I kept going to the levels. We talked about Ram and Sita, they're the young prince and princess. The next level, they go on a quest. They're separated from their home. And instead of being just the good, beautiful little prince and the good little princess, they were goody two-shoes. They really were in the kingdom. They followed all the rules and customs, and they did everything right. Then all of a sudden he's exiled, and a whole new chapter begins. Because we know when we go on a real quest, it's a whole different law of nature. now the quest, and the archetypal quest of it, and this process of purification that Joseph Campbell describes so beautifully, takes into effect. It comes into play, where it's about the purification process and the growth of one's development of their capacity to be true heroes of this world, meaning they're, the heroic quest cycles. You live in your home, you get separated, you have this great victory on the outer level, which is a complete transformation on the inner level. You're transformed as a being, and you come back to flesh. That's level 2. Level 3 is the interesting one. Level 3 is the realm of the god and the goddess. Now what happened was, when the gods began to see Ravana growing in power, they decided to incarnate as monkeys and bears to take out Ravana. And so the demigods appealed to Vishnu, the maintainer of the universe, with Lakshmi, Mahalakshmi at his side. And they decided that Vishnu and Mahalakshmi would incarnate as a man and a woman. And it's right there in the Ramayana. It says exactly that Vishnu decided to incarnate as Ram, and he divided himself up. Ram got half of him, and then Bharat got the next part, and then Lakshmi got the next part, and Shatrugna. So they were all like anywhere from half to 1/8, because Lakshman and Shatrugna were twins. So they were Vishnu incarnate, and Mahalakshmi incarnate as Sita. And then they forgot. They forgot they were gods in human form. They're avatars. Vishnu and Mahalakshmi incarnated as Ram and Sita. And we're all divine beings in human form. Right? We're all divine beings in human form. And we get to witness their journey through the Ramayana as these divine beings in human form. And even though he's like Vishnu himself, the maintainer of the entire universe in a human form, which I can't get my head around. It's just impossible to conceive. How would they act? How would they think? What would they do? How do they do that? They're just this unbounded consciousness that can be anything, but they're in a human form. And there's some people, especially the Hare Krishna movement, they talk about where it's just like they really knew they were Vishnu and Mahalakshmi all along, and they put on the show to pretend that they were humans. But then it wouldn't be powerful in our own evolution. They're humans and the divine. And sometimes they're having trouble sorting it out. Just like we have trouble sorting it out, our divine aspect and our human aspect. That's why the Ramayana is so powerful. Constantly displays divine lila between divine and mortal, divine and mortal. It's another big play of opposites to sort out. How can we be both divine and mortal human beings? And how do we manage to be both? We're both. We swing back and forth. That's one of the most powerful plays of opposites. So, and there's even a fourth level. Fourth level is the level of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is that unbounded, undifferentiated wholeness, Purushottama, absolute level of consciousness. It's a force of nature. Prakriti is the feminine aspect of this absolute diversification, this creative diversification, which I talked about at the very beginning. That's the primordial force of nature, Purusha and Prakriti. Absolute level of life, relative level of life. At the subtlest level, Ram is a beautiful prince. Simultaneously, he's this hero, and Sita's the heroine going on a quest. Simultaneously, they're Vishnu and Mahalakshmi. Simultaneously, they're Purusha and Prakriti. The full range, all at the same time. All this flow of nature, all at the same time. You are all those levels of nature, all at the same time. The force of your evolution is guiding you through those levels. Now I'm developing this model here. So we get the swing of emotions, love, dharma, it's moving us along. We're transcending to deeper level of synthesis each time. trying to embrace these seemingly irreconcilable opposites, moving along with this force of evolution. And this force of evolution is taking us through these levels. We're going from our normal waking state of consciousness, being our dutiful little good boys and little good girls growing up. And we finally realize that we have to come of age, and we go on a great quest to become more of a fully developed, fully integrated being. This would be like Maslow's level of a fully actualized being. Deep down, we're divine beings in human form. We're Ram and Sita avatars. We're divine beings in human form, and they are just more expressed versions of that. More fully fleshed versions of avatars. They have way more juice, prana, like mahaprana, at that level. And at the sunless level, we start to see deep in our meditations that we are Purusha in front of, which is that unbounded feel and the fluctuations of creativity that come out of it. That's why I set the stage for everything. Now, getting the picture a little bit more? Is this going good?
Yes.
All right. Any questions? You have a question?
Forgot my question. I would like you.
I think we need a song. Shanti, are you ready to sing? I think this is the time to. I mean, I've really given you a lot right now, and I haven't even done. I don't want to see if Shanti's agreed to sing Sita Ram, which I think we need Sita Ram right now. So that's what we're going to go into in part 2. Are you good?
Yeah.
Fantastic. This will break it up a little bit because some of you were really into it, but I was like feeling like people had these glazed looks on their face, like, whoa, he's giving us way too much.
I feel very captivated. Is this on? Yes. Yes? Really? Yeah.
We're doing good. 5 o'clock. We're gonna rock. you, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Another play of opposites. Just enlivening up the story and the concept and the vision, and then just swinging in this flow of devotion and softening of music, which always opens our heart.
Oops. My fourth accident of the day.
I'm going to step on that any moment and have wet socks, which will really keep it lively. What happened to Sita? By the way, you notice this is Sita Ram. In the end of Ram's life, I'll give you a clue. Ram was known as Sita Ram because there was no just Ram. There was no just Sita. Remember, they're Vishnu and Mahalakshmi, Purusha and Prakriti. They are inseparable. The deepest level of life is separate. The divine masculine, I'm giving the punchline of the whole story here right now, guys. The divine masculine and the divine feminine are inseparable. They're not two separate things. They're so interwoven. And yet we have this illusion that they are separate from two different things. And we're playing that story out. I'm really giving you the punchline of the story. That's what you get to near the end. I should have told you that. But you're going to forget. Because in your life, you will forget that. That's this beauty. We forget all the time who we really are. Literally, in the story, there's one section of the story where, I'm dancing around. What happened to Sita? 10 months. They're hanging out with the rishis. They're having a good time. Some of the Rakshasas had done some things. Ravana's sister came and fell in love with Ram. And she wanted him. And he says, no, I'm married already. It was my wife Sita. You should go with my brother, Lakshman. And she came to forest. And then they were playing back, and then Lakshman said, no, I'm just a servant. Ram is the king. You want the king. And they went back and forth. And Shurpanakha got so frustrated she pounced on Sita to eat her up. And Lakshman intervened quickly and disfigured her, cut off her ears and nose. She went screaming back to her half-brothers, and they mounted a force, Kara and Dushan, and they came and they mounted a force of 14,000 warriors against Ram. And he said, Lakshman, you go in the cave and protect Sita, I will take them on single-handedly. And he destroyed 14,000 Rakshasa warriors single-handedly. Because he's Vishnu incarnate. He can do all kinds of stuff. At least at that moment you realize, okay, he's not just Ram, he's not just the king, the prince, he's not just on a quest. He's starting to get these glimpses along the way. His powers start to come on with time. But it happens slowly in the story where you kind of go, I bought into that he was just a man. I bought into that he was just a hero. I kind of realized who he was. Well, anyway, beautiful woman in the world. Sita is the most. And he had abducted 1,000 women. Of 1,000 women. He was such a powerful man, incredibly good looking, incredibly charismatic, and the wealthiest man in the world. Maybe more than one. So little size to it. All this, even though he abducted all of them, he had a curse on him that he could not take them by force. So all these women surrendered to him because he won them over his charm and power. 1,000 women were his wife, but Shurpanakha convinced that it's nothing compared to Sita. He decided he must have them. He convinced his master sorcerer Maricha to disguise himself as a phantasmagorical golden deer. And this golden deer comes into the forest, covered with gold, silver, gems, and turquoise. Unbelievable magical deer that just enchanted the eye completely. All the gold is glitter, and Sita had to have it. Sita insisted that she wanted this golden deer as a pet. Ram goes into the deer, lured Ram away, and he knew that it was probably a Rakshasa trick. So he said, Lakshman, guard Sita, and no matter what, don't leave her side. At some point, it was all a trick. Maricha, Ram couldn't catch it because these Rakshasas were, and finally Ram had to kill it. And then once it was killed, he converted to Maricha, and then perfectly in Ram's voice, he said, Sita, Lakshman, I'm in trouble, come help me. in Ram's voice. Sita goes nuts. This is a whole story. Here's an example. Lakshmana is totally devoted to Ram, always obeys his orders, but he's also devoted to Sita. Sita absolutely gives a full court press. It's the only time you see what she's capable of. She's a force of nature. Lakshmana would never break his orders, but finally, Sita just tortures Lakshmana. He says, you did this, you just wanted me this whole time. You engineered this. You got Ram away so you could have me. Lakshmana couldn't bear it. She finally says, I'm going to take my own life, and we should go after Ram right now. So, Lakshmana leaves. Ravana, in disguise as a mendicant, sadhu, comes in, lures her out of the protective circle that Lakshmana created, and kidnaps her, and abducts her, and takes her alive. Sita is now held in captivity by the king of the demons. He says she won't acquiesce to it. She will not surrender to it, no matter what. She's held captive. She's put in a garden, the Ashoka garden. I don't know how many of you know this story. I'm telling you just for some of the people. And you can't break her. And finally, he says to his Rakshasi guards, the women Rakshasis, to break her. Ultimately cajole her and use psychological torture, use whatever it takes, physical abuse, anything to break her. She lasts for 10 months of this. Now, Ravana can take any form at will. He tortures her, psychological torture. Unbelievable what she went through for 10 months, unyielding. At one point, she holds a single blade of grass between her and Ravana. I mean, no one has been able to ever withstand it. A single blade of grass, and he's unable to even get through a single blade of grass that she holds up. She stands up to him with such power, such resilience, and don't let anyone ever say that Sita was weak and submissive. She's painted that way by some of the patriarchal adaptations of the Ramayana. She's the most powerful woman. She's nature herself. She's Mahalakshmi. She's nature itself. Nothing can break her. But finally, after 10 months, he announced that unless she submits to him, in 12 months' time, in a year's time, he will cut her up and eat her for his breakfast. And when the time is running out, she decides that she can never allow that. She decides to commit suicide, which is unheard of, inconceivable to see that we take her own life. She was going to hang herself. She had really long hair to hang herself, wrap her braid over the Ashoka thing and hang herself. And this is where Hanuman comes in. This is Sundarakanda, the 5th book of the Ramayana. There's 7 books of the Ramayana. So we're weaving together the whole story. Now Hanuman is the messenger. He's the chief minister of Sugriv, king of the Vanaras. The Vanaras are they're called apes and monkeys. It's a ape-like race of highly intelligent beings. And we know now, even from anthropology, there was multiple tracks of our simian ancestors, sapiens. I mean, that they keep finding these new species. There was, if the Ramayana was 14,000 years ago, it describes, by the way, mastodons with 4 tusks. Those are in the Ramayana. Those are still around 14,000 years ago. And some of these other races were still around 14,000 years ago. So it's not that far-fetched that there was this extraordinary race of highly intelligent ape-like beings, and they were called Vanaras. Sugriva was the king of the Vanaras. Hanuman was his chief minister. Hanuman and Ram meet, because Ram is in exile. This is after Sita is kidnapped. They cannot find her anywhere. They're wandering in the forest. And some being tells them, make an alliance with Sugriva, and you will find Sita. So they go in search of Sugriva, and Sugriva thinks that they're coming to kill him, because it's another whole story. And Hanuman disguises himself once again as a young sage and speaks in perfect Sanskrit to Ram and Lakshmana. And they can't believe who is this great. And then he reveals himself as this ape-like force. And there's an immediate bond between Ram and Hanuman. Because who incarnated as Hanuman?
Shiva?
Shiva. He was the son of Vayu, son of the wind, but he was also an incarnation of Shiva. Somehow they managed to do both. So Hanuman Hanuman is equally powerful as Vishnu. Shiva is equally powerful as Vishnu, maybe more powerful. So here, but Hanuman takes the role of this ultimate servant to Ram in this incarnation. Even though he's equally powerful, and as the story unfolds, you realize Hanuman can do everything. What do we even need Ram for? Hanuman does everything to keep the story moving along. Gosh, I'm really going to get to Hanuman and Sita. So, Hanuman, there's so many parts of the story, but Hanuman eventually flies across the ocean to Lanka and is sent on a mission to discover the whereabouts of Sita, and he flies across the ocean. Now, Hanuman was cursed too. His curse was that he forgot all of his powers. And it was Jambavan, the king of the bears, has said, remember who you are. And Hanuman remembers who he is by Jambavan, king of the bears, exhorting him. And his curse was he wasn't mature enough, because he was very mischievous when he was young, and he played around with the rishis and threw them around and did all kinds of weird stuff. And finally he remembers his own power and is able to fly across the ocean. And this is Sundarakanda. This is what I was wanting to get to today. Is what happens. So Sita is about to commit suicide. And Hanuman comes on the scene. First of all, he flies across the ocean, defeats the tutelary goddess of Lanka, which is a giant demon. Hanuman just gets her with the palm of the hand. He's like 60-foot giant. Because at that time, every city had a tutelary demon or goddess guarding it. I mean, because there was these devas were active, meaning this consciousness manifested as these beings. And then he enters Lanka, he searches, he cannot find Sita anywhere, and he's so impressed. Like Hanuman describes in detail in the Valmiki Ramayana. Hanuman's in awe of Ravana and his power. He's in awe. He cannot believe. He said, if this man had that ability, he would have controlled the world. I mean, Ravana is so powerful, so charismatic, so brilliant, and his kingdom was just so lavish and extraordinary. But he got caught up in this ego because he was invincible in his powers, or so he thought. But there's more to the story about what Ravana is doing as well. There's a great tape of Ram Das describing this. Why Ravana incarnated? Remember, he got the avatars coming down. Why did the avatars come down? Why did Ram and Lakshmana come? Ram and Sita incarnate. To purify the world of the ignorance of Ravana. Ravana was the embodiment of the dark force, which was taking over the world at that time. They were highly technological. They were incredibly wealthy. They used very advanced weaponry, and they had extraordinary control of the laws of nature, and they were incredibly surface level oriented towards wealth and power. Remind you of anything about that? This is a Ravanic culture as far as I can see happening right now. Pure, and it's called Ravanic tendencies. Ravenous, devour everything. Sita is the goddess of the earth, by the way. I forgot to tell the beginning story. Sita was, all these other goddesses come down from heaven. Whoa, we're coming down to earth. Sita's born of the earth. Sita was found in the earth. Her father was plowing the field. King Janaka found Sita. Sita is the embodiment of the earth goddess. She's an earth goddess. So Ram may have come from on high as Vishnu, but Sita, in this form, was born of the earth. Marriage of heaven and earth. Now you're getting, there's so many layers of this story, I could go on forever. So now that you've got this whole thing, they've come down to purify the world of ignorance. The world, and we know this is what avatars do. Krishna came because the world had lapsed into barbarism by that time of 5000 BC, and there needed to be an incarnation of Vishnu. Those are the 9 incarnations of Vishnu. Krishna was later. Ram was earlier. It's Ram and Sita. Remember that they always talk about Ram. It's Ram and Sita. Sita Ram. They incarnated as a pair. Ram gets all the credit because he was fighting all the battles. But who is activating the story? Sita. These are Sita's gems. Sita is the one who insisted on going to the forest. She knew what she was doing. She knew what was going to happen. She knew how dangerous it was. If she hadn't gone along on the story, accompanied Ram in the forest, the Ramayana would have never unfolded. Remember, they know their secret mission is to take out not just Ravana as the king, but the whole Ravanic tendencies, Rakshasa, wealth, greed, power, destruction, control. They know that's their mission, and they sometimes forget it along the way. They just become that, husband and wife, prince and princess, god and goddess. Sita's activating alone. Why did Sita go after the golden deer? She was the wisest woman in the world. She was nature herself. Was she really fooled by the golden deer? Not sure. How did you get Lakshman? Lakshman would never disobey an order. She hit below the belt so hard to get him to leave. I don't know if I could have withstood what she told him. Maybe you gotta read this section. It's really bad, really harsh. But she got Lakshman to leave, so Ravana could take her. And her whole play in the Ashoka garden for those 10 months. She is the one breaking down Ravana. She's the one controlling the show. And you don't see that. So what we did on this project, Sita's Gems, we extracted 24 of the most compelling passages featuring Sita from the Ramayana. Because she plays a very small role in the Ramayana, in the actual number of verses. But when you take her verses out and stand them alone, it's no longer a Ramayana, it's a Sita. Then her real story emerges, and then you realize she's making the whole thing happen because she's nature. She's the dynamic, creative, impulsive nature. She is the one breaking down Ravana, and it looks like Ravana's breaking down her. Hanuman, to me, what happens when he comes, so he's the ultimate devotee of Ram, they don't say much to each other. Hanuman knows who he is as soon as he sees him. There's this deep bond of love between them. There's not much that goes on between Ram and Hanuman. They just know. When Hanuman comes back from figuring out where Sita was, Ram gives him a big hug. And they realize who they are. Ram gives him a big hug. And then Hanuman saves them later on in the story that they were deeply wounded in the mountain healing herbs. There's not much dialogue between Ram and Hanuman. There's page after page after page of dialogue between Hanuman and Sita. This incredibly intricate, deep flow of love and grace. And Sita plays this delicate little princess who's just about, who's about to commit suicide. And Hanuman is a master psychologist. Hanuman is portrayed, I kind of don't like that we made him into this simple little monkey. He's not a simple little monkey. He's the most highly developed runner. He's a master psychologist. He's a master strategist. He counsels well. He is incredible intuition. His power is extraordinary in battle. His prowess is unbelievable. His cities are unbelievable. He's the most powerful character in the Ramayana. And it's sometimes he's expressed as an embodiment of the right use of ego. Because as powerful he is, he serves Ram. And he serves Sita. So, Hanuman's job in Sundarakanda is to restore her faith. And it's a flow of faith, a deep understanding of this nature of faith and doubt. Because everyone on the path goes through periods of doubt, right? And I'm sure all of you have experienced great doubt on the path. Doubt about the place in your life and your evolution with your career, with your finances, with your evolution, with wondering if you're really making progress, with where you're at. Does he love me? Am I loved? Do I remember who I am? Do these questions seem a little bit familiar to you? Would you like to hear a little bit of a Ramayana story? So, I just felt like, by the way, the plan was to go to about 6. Is that cool? But I want to leave time for questions. So, and I should be connected to Bluetooth, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, just fill you in on where we're at. Hanuman has been hiding in a tree. Ravana comes in with his entourage and threatens her, reminds her that in just a short time he will eat up her breakfast. She holds up her blade of grass. Then he gets the Rakshasi guards to figure out a way to psychologically and emotionally and physically break her. I mean, some of the stuff that Ravana does, for example, it comes a little bit later. Ravana has another one of his sorcerers conjure up a head, Ram's head, dripping with blood. and presents it to Sita saying, "Dead is your husband!" Just break her. Why are you holding up with this puny man when I'm Ravana, king of the demons? I mean, this is really serious stuff. So Hanuman is a master psychologist because he knows, first of all, he's got to be very careful not to be discovered. He knows that Sita will think of him, because Ravana can take any form at will. He's done every trick in the book. So how does she know that he's really going to be Rama's messenger? And he wins her over from the tree. She hears, because he's gone from a giant monkey now to a giant, gargantuan ape, to a little tiny monkey hiding in the tree. And starts to sing Rama's praises in Sanskrit. That's how he begins to win her over. But she still doubts it. She can't believe that this is not Ravana coming to trick her again. So, if you like good stories, we're going to listen to about, I think it's about 8 minutes. This is from Sundarakanda, this dialogue between Hanuman and Sita, and you get a flavor. And then I'll give you some of the commentary. This is one of the passages from Sita's Gems. This is one of the gems. One of my favorites.
Sundarakanda, Canto 34.
Yeah, why don't you get it? Make sure maybe you got this kid up for YouTube. Should be good now?
Yeah.
Sundarakanda, Canto 34. Sita still doubts Hanuman's words. Hearing those words of her who had been overwhelmed by grief upon grief, Hanuman, the leader of the Vanara hosts, tried his best to soothe her. I have come as a messenger from Ram, my lady, and bring you his message, Vaidehi. Ram is well, and he sends you his greetings. Ram, son of Dashratha, who has mastered the weapon over which Brahma presides, who knows the entire Veda and is foremost of those who know its teachings, sends you his good wishes. The immensely powerful Lakshmi, your husband's loving and devoted follower, made his prostrations to you, his mind oppressed with grief. On hearing the news of the welfare of those lions among men, the lady answered Hanuman, her whole body thrilling with joy. Ah, how blessedly true seems to be the popular saying. A man may attain happiness if he lives long enough, even if he has to wait for 100 years. Meeting him thus, she was immensely pleased with Hanuman, and they went on talking, confiding in each other. Hearing what Sita, who was sunk in misery, said, Hanuman came closer to her. But the nearer Hanuman came, the more did Sita suspect him of being Ravana. Alas, I have done wrong, fie upon me, in telling him what I did tell him, for this is none other than Ravana himself in disguise. And she, of the flawless limbs, let go her hold of the branch of the Ashoka tree in her distress, and slumped down on the ground at that very spot. Seeing her extreme distress and frenzied fear, Hanuman of the mighty arm prostrated himself before Janaka's daughter. But she, in her terror, would not so much as look at him. Seeing him make his bow, Sita of the moon-like face told him in her sweet voice, heaving a long sigh, if you are indeed Ravana himself, and now appear before me, disguising yourself by your magical skill to cause me further affliction, it is not fair. You are none other than the Ravana whom I saw at Chanastana, who appeared before me disguising himself in the garb of a wandering mendicant. It is not right that you should thus torment me, O Rakshasa, who can take any form at will, when I, thin, with fasting and feeling miserable, have suffered so much. Perhaps my fears are unfounded, for the sight of you gives me pleasure. If you are really Ram's messenger, may all that is good attend you. I would like to question you about Ram, O best of apes, for I love to hear of him. Dwell on the qualities of Ram, my beloved, O ape. You ravish my heart, O well-favored one, as the flood does the riverbank. Ah, how pleasant this dream, that I, taken from him so long ago, see the ape sent by Raghava. If I could see the valiant Raghava and Lakshman, even if only in a dream, I should not die. But even my dreams are unfriendly to me. I do not, however, think that I am dreaming now, for nothing good happens to him who sees a monkey in a dream, whereas my luck is turning. Or could it be just hallucination, or a ghost that I see, the effect of a disordered brain, a mirage? This is no phantom conjured up by a heated brain, nor is it a hallucination which is known by the same signs. For I clearly recognize myself and this Vanara. Having thus considered all the possibilities, she concluded that it must be the king of the Rakshasas, because the Rakshasas could take any form at will. Having thus decided, Janaka's daughter, Sita of the slim waist, would not answer the Vanara at all. And he, seeing how her thoughts were running, set himself to gladden her heart with words that would please her ear. Ram is like the sun in his power, and he is loved by all creatures like the moon. He is king over all the world, like the god Vaishravana. He is as full of valor as Vishnu of the immense renown, and as truthful and sweet-spoken as the lord of speech, Brahaspati himself. He is handsome, agreeable, and gracious, like the incarnate god of love. He is first among the great chariot warriors of the world. It is under the shadow of the right arm of that man of might that the world reposes securely. You will shortly see that Raghava, who was decoyed from the hermitage by the ruse of the phantom deer, by him who then carried you off from the empty hermitage. You shall shortly see him reaping the fruit of that act. I have come here, sent as a messenger to you by the heroic one, who will before long slay Ravana in battle with arrows like blazing tongues of flame shot in his wrath. He who is distraught with grief at your loss sends you his greetings. Lakshman, of the mighty arm and immense power, the perpetual joy of Sumitra, also made his prostrations to you, and he sends you his greetings. Ram has a friend, my lady, Sugriva, king over the great Vanara chiefs, and he too sends you his greetings. Ram, Lakshman, and Sugriva are constantly thinking of you. God be thanked that you, having fallen into the hands of the Rakshasis, are still alive. You shall shortly see Ram, Lakshman of the immense strength, and Sugriva of the limitless puissance, followed by millions of monkeys. I am Sugriva's minister, known as Hanuman. I entered Lanka, leaping across the ocean, planting my foot on the head of the wicked Ravana, relying on my own valor, I have come to see you. I am not what you take me for, my lady. Give up your suspicions and lend me your ear.
Doesn't it feel good listening to the original Ramayana? This is the original Valmiki Ramayana in the best available translation from Sanskrit to English. This is the real thing. And I can see everyone settles down listening to it. You just listen to the original Ramayana. It's not in Sanskrit, but it's a very excellent translation from Sanskrit to English. And this was read by Malika Bush. So we'll back up. I spent 7 years recording the complete unabridged Valmiki Ramayana as a dramatic reading. It took 7 years, not so much because of the production, because of the karma. It's the world's longest audiobook. It's a 75-hour-long, fully dramatized production of the entire Ramayana. That's how I went insane and developed all my knowledge of the Ramayana. So for this project, for Sita's Gems, it was done with all male voices. I couldn't imagine, even though I did not want to re-record it, it had to be done in a woman's voice. So I cast 3 narrators. Malika Bush is a young actress who's one of them. I think she does a beautiful job doing all the voices. And there's the 3 narrators, each take 8 passages. But just the flow, it's the flow. You can see how it works. Remember when I told you about the active ingredient in the Ramayana? This flow of emotion. This feeling of like, oh, Sita, she can't go on another day living in captivity away from Ram, and 10 months is a long time to be physically, psychologically, and emotionally. And she did eat. She did eat the whole time. She fasted the whole time. Apparently, that's one of the stories. How could she go through all this? And then this figure comes, a monkey speaking Sanskrit, and she knows Ram. And this is just like you're feeling Hanuman because you know what his setup is, his trajectory. And you'll see this trajectory, and that's where they meet in Sundarakanda. And this happens over and over again. I could play you multiple passages, but it took me this long to build up the storyline, and you get this feel of, like, you know Sita needs rejuvenation. She needs nourishment. She needs to be touched. She needs to be redeemed from her doubts and fears, just like we do.
What happened to the part where Hanuman brings Ram's ring?
That's coming out in that.
Oh.
So, I mean, I wanted to play at least one passage. So finally, Sita, in the next canto, that was canto 34, and in canto 36, Ram had given Hanuman his signet ring, and Hanuman gives it to her. And that ring can never be duplicated. It's one of the signets. It can never be duplicated. So she knew it wasn't rushed so quickly. And so I just want to get you this feeling of this heart absolutely crushed, even though she's uncrushable. She was controlling Ram, but she could see what was happening. The outcome didn't look good. And then I want to just read you a little bit of one of the commentaries, just so you get a flavor. So I've recruited these 12 women wisdom leaders. Probably many of you know Vandana Shiva, the famous environmentalist in India, who's just a monster, organizer of, she was nominated for the Nobel Prize. She does the introduction and conclusion. The other commentaries are by Meena Rao's the co-host. Mirabai Starr is one of the commentators. Chitra Deva Karuni was a famous novelist who wrote Palace of Illusion and Forest of Enchantment. Acharya Shunya, those are some of the commentators. But one of them is Kavita Chinayan, who's a medical doctor, a heart doctor, and is an extraordinary Vedic. Her depth of Vedic knowledge is extraordinary. She did the commentary for this section. I just wanted you to get a feel of her description of what Sita's going through in this passage. Just as a couple of paragraphs, I want you to get a feel for the Sita's Gems commentary. So this is directly from Kavita Chinayan. Sita is not just Ram's helpless wife. She is a Shakti, or power, or muse. In this passage, Sita shares with Hanuman that she is most dear to Ram, even more than his family of origin. And yet she displays the very human trait of disbelief and hopelessness. in the previous passage. I've been playing this. And here she is doubt-stricken, despite Hanuman's reassurance of Rama's devotion to her. Does he still love me? Does he still think about me? Why does it come to me when he can vanquish Ravana so easily? This is familiar. Doubt is the hallmark of the human condition. Even when life graces us with abundance and gifts, we don't trust it. Add in some hardships, and all those gifts just recede into the background. Sita was the gem of Mithila, that's the kingdom she came from, peerless in her beauty and attainments, and only Ram, the avatar of Vishnu on earth, could win her hand in marriage. Such is the state of the jiva, or the individual soul. It doesn't matter how perfect we inherently are, we will always seek validation from an external source. Sita's portrayal of Bhranti, the Sanskrit word for doubt, is perfection. She demonstrates the power of doubt that represses faith and joy. In her heart of hearts, she knew that Ram would never forsake her. And yet she expresses doubt when she gets over the shock of seeing Hanuman in the Ashoka garden. Even the shock is framed as an exaggeration of her so-called womanliness, which overshadows the fact that she was able to ward off the mighty Ravana by her sheer inner power. Ultimately, since he was unable to subjugate her, Ravana actually had to submit to her power. I mentioned this earlier. This came from Purita, and was forced to accept her will. And yet, here, she downplays her mind to portray the full spectrum of a woman's emotions and power. While she herself is formidable, she puts forth the breadth and depth of Prakriti, or nature, which is her true identity. The woman expresses the full range of life, from the exalted, peerless state that she's attained to this depth of emotions. Sita teaches us the evolution of consciousness. Despair, hopelessness, and doubt are not only normal and common, but are needed on our path. This goes back to the play of opposites that Purita and I talk about all the time. And what absorbs the doubt is prana, or the vital life force. This is Hanuman. As the son of Vayu, the wind god, Hanuman represents the essence of life force that transforms, transmutes, and transmigrates. Imagine, all of you right now, having doubt, having a conversation. Your doubt is having a conversation with your vital life force, prana. We do that all the time. Usually our doubts win out. What if prana wins out? I'm adding that in myself. Imagine doubt having a conversation with vital life force, when the vital life force seeps into doubt and energizes it with hope and inspiration. Next, when Hanuman hands over Ram's signet ring, Sita's doubt is transmuted to strength. All we really need is a signet ring, a sign that the divine has not forsaken us, to remember our true nature as being formidable and whole and perfect. What's more sundara, beautiful? Sundara means beautiful than this. So what, if we're using this as a sign, what's your key doubt right now? Where are you in your life right now? What's the doubt that's holding you up about your evolution? I'm really asking this. It's not a rhetorical question. You can say it out loud, but I at least want you to say it inside.
I feel like I'm too much sometimes.
You're just too much, too big.
Too much, too expansive, and so that makes me feel like I have to shrink.
Because people are not responding.
Yeah, and so I'd like to find more of the poetry with the expansion and contraction of that.
Would it be possible to hold that polarity simultaneously?
I think so.
I mean, because there is an ebb and flow of your expansion. I am the same thing. When I get going, people can't handle my energy. And then I get shamed into repressing the small so they can handle it. And there's a natural ebb and flow between those. And we're both. And that's an interesting polarity of it, that we're both. We're not one or the other. Good, thank you. Anyone else want to bring up something? You can keep it quiet too if you don't feel like talking, but I just want to make it concrete.
Well, when I'm hearing you tell me this whole story about everything that went on then, and then how everything's the same going on now, and in the story when Sita is coming back to Ram, and that symbolic that the union of the feminine and masculine has returned, and that these other beings aren't in control of demonizing everything. How did that really happen in real life? It's just a story, or is it still happening right now that Sita's still trying to get back to Ram, because in our reality now, the feminine is needing to come back with the masculine in a balance. So that's my question.
Really good question. Hope that came out on is the Ramayana is an ancient story. It's a history of total reality that happened, whether it's 12,000 years ago, 14,000 years ago, or 1.2 million years ago. From another level, the fundamental archetypal dynamics of the Ramayana are happening at every point in creation all the time. This is the thing that I can't bend my mind around. It's an actually story that happened, and it's the fundamental principles of nature. If we had this flow of the Veda in story form, it would be the Ramayana. Ram's energy, Sita's energy, this ebb and flow between the divine masculine and feminine, this incarnation, feminine being repressed, having to come back, it's happening all the time. And there will be an ebb and flow between it. Right now, we are seeing the ebb, like what I feel is happening, big ebb.
But is there ever the union of it really, and the balance of, like, instead of so much polarity, we come into a place of just epic bliss for eternity?
You're gonna have to listen to Sita's Jones.
Okay.
or read the whole Ramayana.
Okay.
Because I don't want to give, I've already given away so much of the punchline. There's the most extraordinary, powerful ender. Most people want to end the Ramayana at the end of Yuddhakanda, which is the 6th book, where Ram defeats Ravana. They triumphantly return to Ayodhya, they're crowned king and queen. Hanuman is their devoted servant. Everyone lives happily ever after. That's the American story. But if you want the Italian story, there's tragedy at the very end. There's tragedy. But unless you include Uttarakhanda, some people consider Uttarakhanda added on. It wasn't part of the original, I disagree, because the transcendental value of the Ramayana comes on in Uttarakhanda. Everyone reveals who they what Ravana was, the role he was playing. It all comes together. And then you get to the transcendental level, and then you realize it's all happening simultaneously. It's the flow of Maya, it's the flow of illusion, it's the flow of truth. You know, and you have to learn to ride the waves, because I don't think there's going to be this stable incarnation. Maybe we could get back to Satyuga, ride the waves for a while, because this ain't ending anytime soon. So, I mean, and take my advice, because I'm not using it. Somebody please. But that's a really good question. Really good question. Any more? Like, I want to hear your doubts, because I mean, unless we start getting concrete with this will just be an entertainment thing. I want you to really go in, just like Kavita said, is where are we right now in our lives? This is the teaching of the flow of grace between Hanuman and Sita. You know, that this Sita's doubt and Hanuman's devotion to her, and then you know, he gives her the ring, and then Sita tells this whole story that only Ram would know, because then Sita has to convince that Hanuman just might make up a story and go back to, yeah, I saw Sita, she's great, everything's fine, because he really wants to do something good for Ram. He might make it up. So she gives him information that only Ram will know. And then Hanuman says, I'll take you back on my back. I can do that. I'll defeat all the Rakshasas. Just go on my back, and there won't even have to be a war. Because no, Ram has to be the one who takes me. Because if that had happened, there would have been a war, and there wouldn't have been this big purification that happened. So it's another example where Sita is furthering the story along. But Sita has the last laugh at the very end, which is the part that I'm not going to go into right now, because that gets very complex. There's two huge challenges that Sita goes through. When Ram wins the war, and Sita is brought before him, he repudiates her, and she chooses to walk into the fire. And that's extraordinary, what happens there. And then Brahma himself has to come to remind Ram. Brahma is created from Vishnu's navel. Brahma has to come back and explain to Ram that it's man and man talking. Brahma says, don't you remember who you are? And Ram goes, I think of myself as a man. He forgot because in the struggles of war, he got so caught up in the external value that he lost his depth and subtlety. That's what happens to men who are at war. And so Brahma comes, the gods come, and then finally Rama remembers who he is. But then there's another test later on. It's the biggest test of all. And it's the thing that I cannot handle. All these years of this woman's devotion to Ram and Hanuman. And this conflict because they can't accept or handle the way Ram treats Sita at the end. And that's what I wanted to go into with Sita's gems. That's when you bring it to the transcendental level. That's where we, in our evolution, have to move through those levels I've talked about, from the little boys and girls to our epic quest, to our divine nature, to becoming forces of nature itself. That we are beginning to live and operate on that transcendental level, which stands as a silent witness to this flow of Maya, which is going to go on and on and on. So you see why I wove this story, even though I said I was going to talk about the flow of grace, because now it's for you to see. I mean, I could play another passage. I mean, I'm willing to go over. You can see once I get going, I can't stop. And we're gonna hear from Jason, if he's around in a moment, because we have to do a Hanuman Chalisa. Is getting a feeling for this flow of grace between Hanuman and Sita. How Sita is in the depths of despair, and how this primal life force comes in and slowly and carefully and wisely and lovingly brings Sita back to her own nature. It's the only time Ram was filled with doubt and lost himself multiple times in the Ramayana. Sita never does. This is the only time she does for a moment. Sita always knows who she is. This is a fundamental difference about Sita. Ram always seems to forget his own nature and does these really surprising things. It seems like, whoa, Ram, you're Vishnu incarnate, come on. Sita always is steady, always resilient. There's only one person who's even more steady than Sita. Hanuman never, ever loses himself for a moment, although, yes, he did too. He forgot his own power. That happens well. But once he's initiated, yeah. So you see these three main forces, and I'm going to invite you to do one more thing here. This is the key. I think you can take home with you. During the Sita's Gems project, a little backstory of how this happened. People always ask, how did you do it? 2021 was the end of COVID. One of the board members of the New Prabhupada Ashram in Taos asked me to teach a course for the NKD Ashram, and it was going to be live streamed. It was a 7-session online course. And I'm going to do okay for Ram. Ram. What's the famous quote? I was struggling with this. What's the famous quote by Maharaji, New Prabhupada, who says, you can help because you're all the New Prabhupada devotees, or some of you are. I'm always seeing Ram everywhere. That's why I'm in love with everything all the time. But do I get it? I know I'm close, but it might not be close. That's the way I was. Ram. And then one of the people at the end of the class, Hanuman Das, who's the caretaker of the New Prabhupada temple, Hanuman temple in Taos, said, Michael, we're all about Hanuman. You've got to make this more Hanuman-centered. And then one of the students in the class said, Michael, you know Hanuman. Your whole life is devotion to Ram. So you know Hanuman. And he's like, bingo! I get it. And that's when I pitched Krishna Das to do this thing, Hanuman's Leap of Faith, together. So I learned a lot about Hanuman. But I really wanted to learn a lot about Sita. I got more than I bargained for in this project because I thought it would be 6 months again to do it. It took 2 years. 15 recording studios around the world. It was a challenging project. 15 women and myself. And so I imbibed these qualities of Hanuman. we imbibe these qualities of Sita. For 20 years I imbibed Ram. Ram is really in my bones. Hanuman is kind of getting into my bones. Sita is getting into my bones. Into my heart. I invite you, this is a good practice, and maybe we'll come close to the end here. Let's just take a couple moments in tuning in. Because there's a vibratory frequency in their name, their Sanskrit name. And let's just try closing our eyes for a moment. Breathing into your central core. And just introduce the name Ram quietly, like a mantra. Subtle vibratory quality of Ram. And let's see the resonance. And if you feel like saying it out loud, you're welcome. Just quietly to yourself. Reverberations of Ram. Ram. See if you can anchor whatever feeling is coming up, or any sensation somatically, or just in your body. What does Ram feel like? You don't have to say it. Let it go. Now let's introduce Sita. Sita. Reverberations of Sita in your body and heart. Let that reverberation of Sita expand under your breath. Letting it fill with you. Feel on your inhale. Let that go, and let's now introduce Hanuman. Hanuman. And let your breath swell in size like Hanuman has the capacity to do. love that image of Ram and Sita in Hanuman's chest, and he opens his chest. You can try that, putting your fingertips over the center of your chest. And you don't have to tear open your chest, but you can energetically open your chest to reveal the nature of Ram and Sita. On the inhale, opening those qualities that you just activated with saying the name of Ram and Sita. Now you're in Hanuman, opening your chest, imagining how those can come into the world. Ram and Sita's energy coming into the world through Hanuman's devotion. And from this beautiful place, I would like to invite now Jason to come up and do Hanuman Chalisa. We can stay in this settled state. He's going to get us going. His own Jason kind of way. And then afterwards, I'll just close with a few words about how to take this all home. While he's setting up. You can make this a practice. Ram, Sita, Hanuman. Find the reverberations of their name in your body.
Bye. Hanuman.